you can never really be able to even imagine what a Shinya Tsukamoto film was like unless you actually tried it. And if you've seen any of his films, whether or not you actually enjoy them, but one thing is for certain, and that's that you'll remember it. Whether or not you liked it, you'll still get something out of it. And he gives us memorable films always. But his style is not for everyone. Unfortunately, really only a few of us are able to appreciate it. And that's because his films are weird. They're very weird. They're dreamlike. They're almost like nightmares. They're violent. And they could get inappropriate at times. But they're also on the darker side. And because of that, I thought one of his films would be appropriate to begin my new Halloween series with. This is spooky season. Something I really look forward to every year. And the good news is that this is also a samurai film. It's a samurai channel, so very fitting. And it's titled Killing from 2018. And I'm actually pretty surprised that I haven't covered this one yet. But if you've seen it, the title Killing is very fitting for this film, because deep down it deals with a samurai who hasn't killed yet, and in fact he's unable to. And if you know anything about samurai, you'll see why that could be a problem. After all, the samurai were required to kill if ordered to, and this even includes themselves. And in this we follow the main character Suzuki. He's a Ronin, so he's a masterless samurai, and he's been living in a farming village. He's helping out the farmers. Occasionally he's sparring with a young farming boy named Ichizuke, and the young boy has always dreamed of just living a more interesting life. And the ideal opportunity arises when they encounter an older samurai, and he's named Sawamura, and he's played by the director of the film, Tsukamoto himself. And this character is on his way to Edo. His plan is of recruiting a group of samurai to offer their services as peacekeepers. And so he sees that Suzuki is skilled with a sword, and that the young Ichizuke shows enough talent. But being a samurai is much harder than they thought, and especially when a band of outlaws sets up camp right near the village. And this is where things start to get interesting. So on paper, it definitely sounds like a familiar samurai concept, but this is not your average samurai film. Tsukamoto just completely flips the samurai cliche. And this is more of an anti-samurai movie. It's an anti-samurai film. And he flips everything by playing with what we already know about the genre. We already know that the older, skilled swordsman will be able to handle situations with violence. But we find out in the film that sometimes that doesn't always work, and it could backfire. And the character Suzuki, on the other hand, is incapable of killing. He's never done it before. Therefore, he's helpless in certain situations. And he desperately wants to be able to kill, almost to a psychotic level. But on the other hand, he knows deep down that if he were to kill, he would lose part of himself, and perhaps be driven into madness. So with most other samurai films, the hero pretty much solves every problem with violence. But violence itself is never really examined like it is with this film. So that definitely gives this film more of a uniqueness. And, the stereotypical Yojimbo type has definitely become a cliche that we've become accustomed to with this genre. And there's also just a statement here about old and young. Tsukamoto's character represents the older generation, people who grew up during a time of war and hardship. And Suzuki represents a younger generation, kids that grew up during peaceful times. They never really had to struggle. And so the younger generation isn't really equipped to solve such a problem as bandits. It would take an older generation, one that is becoming extinct. And this is much like with the samurai, but I think even more so with the samurai genre of films. It's comparing Seven Samurai, which came out years ago, to now. So there's a lot of layers to this film, and it's not a long film at all. It's actually under 80 minutes. So it's very easy to get through. But I read reviews for this film, and it's actually pretty sad just how many people don't get it. They are just disregarding this film as nothing. And they're complaining about stuff like how the sword fights look bad. You know, no one wants to look deeper. No one wants to even try. And I will say that the choreography in spots is a little more shaky cam at times than I prefer. But that could also be on purpose. It's showing just how chaotic and unpleasant a real life fight is like. It's not all beautiful and stylish like films make it out to be. And the fights in this mostly focus on just the gruesome aftermath. And this film actually gets quite bloody at times. Also, I gotta say that I just love Tsukamoto in this film. He definitely sells the part as the older, badass samurai type. But also, he's not like Yojimbo. He has a hint of something darker in him. And what's kind of funny is that Tsukamoto's actually acted in more films than he directed. So he's technically more of an actor than a director. And he's proven that he really could act. And yes, there is some weirdness in this film. It is a Tsukamoto film, and that's to be expected. And there is some horror elements in it, which is why I picked it for the month of October. And I really like the atmosphere that they went for. It seems very summer-like. You know, everything just seems so hot. And it just seems so visceral and real, the way it's filmed. There is no fake polish that most films have. And that could be because it's on a lower budget, but still, Tsukamoto is always able to do a lot with less. But this definitely is on the tamer side of a Tsukamoto film. I will say though that there is still some weird erotic stuff. There is no sex scenes, but there's other stuff. So just keep that in mind when you watch this. But even so, I believe this is his most accessible film for the average film viewer. And I believe it's worth watching. Mainly just for its statement on the samurai genre. You know, sort of flipping around its cliches. But the statement in this film about violence could definitely be applied to most films even now. You know, violence isn't always the answer. Anyway, let me know what you think of this film. And if you know of any good Japanese horror movies, I am making another list. Just let me know in the comments. Anyway, please subscribe, leave a thumbs up. And if you want to support the channel and see it grow, you can support me on Patreon. Link in the description. And like always, thanks for watching.